This is On the Flywheel, a podcast where each week we talk to entrepreneurs and professionals about the practical things they do to build and keep momentum in their personal and professional lives.
Hello and welcome to On the Flywheel. I'm your host, Jonathan Martin with Flywheel Consulting, and today I'm excited to have on the podcast Kathleen Stafford, a realtor with Vanguard Properties. Thanks for coming on today.
Hello, thanks for having me.
So I'm excited to have this conversation with you because you've lived a lot of different lives and had a lot of different careers. And so I think that will be interesting to explore the journey, but also I think maybe there's going to be a takeaway here that maybe it's never too late to start over and try something new.
Are you insinuating that I'm old?
No. I'm insinuating that you're experienced.
Experienced.
Yes.
Yes.
I would never do that. So you're a realtor now.
I am.
But where did you start?
Well, I started, we can go way back. And my very kind of first career job was at Wells Fargo as a they used to call it flex schedule teller. So basically that was their way of not having to give you benefits. You just worked like 17 hours a week or below or something like that.
Was this like you were going to school at the same time, or was this just kind of filling in the gaps?
Graduated from high school, and unfortunately, my plans for college kind of got derailed because my father passed away from a heart attack.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, that was kind of, so I was living in Marin with my dad and my stepmom, and going to go away to school. I had gotten accepted to Santa Barbara, San Diego, Chico. I kind of liked the small town of Chico, so that was where I was kind of heading. And he started kind of letting us know that he was having heart issues and was supposed to be stopping smoking so he could go in and get this angioplasty done. And I would come home a lot, and he would be out on the porch, like smoking, trying to hide it from my stepmom. So that kind of grounded me a little bit.
Yeah.
I wasn't kind of sure what I was going to do. So unfortunately, he never stopped smoking, never got that surgery, and died from a massive heart attack. So
yeah,
that's
tough, especially at that age. That's really young to lose your dad.
Yeah, it was. And living in a place like Marin, it was good and bad. My mom, who she passed away also, but at that time I'm very close to, she lived in this little town called Bly, Oregon. And there was like a gas station and a mini mart. And it was 50 miles away from a decent-sized town of Klamath Falls, Oregon. So I knew if I had moved there, this sounds horrible, but my dating pool would have been like a gas station attendant or something like that, because it snowed there. So how can you go to school 50 miles away in the winter? So I thought, you know what, I'm buckling down. I enrolled in College of Marin night classes and started working at Wells Fargo. And
that was a local community college.
Yes, in Marin and Kempfield. We had lived in Greenbrae from there. And my tangled road so that was a road that I didn't plan on, right?
Yeah.
But I will say I had great expectations of knowing what I wanted out of life. And not moving to a tiny town that didn't have an economy that I couldn't flourish in. I knew I had to do something to keep up with the lifestyle that I had wanted. So that began the race forever, still chasing it, still trying to afford everything.
So if it's not too personal, I am curious, like, that is a pretty traumatic thing to happen to you. I know it's hard. My wife has experienced some of the same stuff, like heart issues run big time in her family, and it took. She lost, like, most of her uncles have died from a heart attack, and her dad it took so much convincing to get this guy into the hospital, and it's still a constant fight. But he had to have a quadruple bypass, and so that's hard to grapple with. And so I'm wondering how that affected you at a young age. How do you think it changed your outlook on life?
Well, this is funny because I was born in the 70s, but grew up in the 80s. And I think I've talked to you about this before, but we were all latchkey kids. Like, we had parents that both work. So we just ran the town. We did whatever we wanted to do. So I was already very independent, probably overly independent. But I did have the grounding of my father, who was very successful. He retired from the Air Force, very high command, before I was born. But I had his military upbringing, even though he was retired, was still there. We moved every 2 years, literally, even if it was just to the next town in Marin, and a couple times moved to Petaluma, which is how I found Petaluma and wanted to raise my kids here. But there was always a foundation. And when he came out of the military, he started his own business. He was an entrepreneur, very successful and driven and very smart. So, and I was his 6th or 7th kid, depending on who you ask. So I'm very serious when I say that. So, he was an older parent, to me. So he was exhausted by the time I came around, but he did kind of say a few pointed things to me here and there, like, you don't think you're kidding. I know what you're doing, really. Yeah. So knock it off and figure it out.
So it kept you just grounded enough that you didn't do anything too stupid.
Yes, exactly. But he was my pillar of strength. And when he passed away, you do have this feeling of, like, all of a sudden that rug has been pulled out below you, and you got to figure things out quick. And I did. I figured things out quick. I made decisions that maybe weren't the greatest of decisions, moving in with boyfriends and, that kind of stuff. But those were choices that I had made because of situations. And I think the tools that I had gathered along the way as that independent latchkey kid running the streets, basically, and understanding if you want something, it's going to take work. It gave me what I needed, but I did still feel, as a young woman in the 80s, especially like working in a banking situation, where you're
still very old white and male at that time, for sure.
And it was one of those things where I had to really sink down and just ask those hard questions, and they had to answer to a 20-year-old girl, but they did. And I really enjoyed it and kind of flourished through there and got through it. And along the way, met and married my first husband, the father of my 3 kids, which we were talking about earlier. I got married at 23, first kid at 25, second 2 and 3 were twins, came at 28. It was, that's what you did.
Right.
You go to work, you do what you can. And at the time, my husband was a chef who worked for his parents, who had a couple restaurants. So he was gone all the time, literally
working
all the
crazy
time.
Hours,
so it was a passing of the night kind of thing. And that's what led to the divorce at 37. But we're still friends. We still co-parent. We did end up opening a restaurant together after he kind of parted ways with his parents and wanted to do something. I somehow weaseled my way into opening a restaurant with him and my current husband that I had married by then. So it was.
So you started the restaurant after you were divorced with your ex-husband
and my husband
and your current husband.
Yep.
I did not know that. That is okay. We're gonna have to. I got questions about that.
I know it was. The things you do for your kids, and I knew him being a chef. Unless I got involved and got him really close to them where they could see him often, they may not have had an opportunity really to spend a lot of time with him.
So that was the motivation then. It was more about the kids than some big dream to open a restaurant.
Yeah, and even though he was my ex-husband, he is an extremely talented chef. Just extremely talented. And we had talked for years when we were married about opening restaurants and all that kind of stuff. So it just kind of happened. And I am blessed that my husband, Lawrence, he just accepts me and all my crazy ideas. He really does. So.
It's important to have a partner that, is ride or die, so to speak, and willing to,
for sure,
to back you up. So was he, what was the relationship then? Your ex-husband's in the kitchen, and then are you guys doing, your new husband is business partner? What is he? Is he
Well,
silent?
it
Like how
started
involved is he
out
in the
with
day to day?
both of us being silent. I was
Okay.
still working at Wells Fargo.
Okay.
And I just, I was going to be a silent partner. And I worked for 6 months. And all of a sudden, 1 month in, I'm getting calls from employees calling in sick. And I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? I'm at work. So I ended up retiring from Wells Fargo, and then I was the front of house diva. He was the back of house chef, and my husband was working for HP at the time, but worked remotely. He worked for beer. So he'd come and sit at the bar and drink beer, and if I was busy, he'd get up, he'd help with the tables. I mean, just they'd gang up against me, and it just worked.
Yeah.
And we did that for about 10 years. And I got really good at yelling without yelling. So I would do that Italian kind of thing to my ex-husband in the back, or my current husband, whoever was pissing me off at the time. But it was so fun and exhilarating, and building your business and seeing something that you started that was just, pacing the floors because there was no customers, to having like a bustling community kind of. I don't know if you remember Cheers. You're kind of younger than me, but it was a Cheers.
I'm aware of Cheers.
Yes.
I've never really watched Cheers. I'm sorry.
Well, it was the East Side Petaluma Cheers. I may not remember your name, but I know what you eat and what your kid eats and all that kind of stuff. So it was great.
Yeah, I mean that's got to be one of the most. Restaurants are hard, as I understand, but it's got to be one of the most rewarding parts. Is like when you do end up with a full restaurant, people are enjoying the food and they're gathering together, and that does have to feel really special.
It was great. It was super fun, and then the stress did get a lot on my body, because in order to have a successful restaurant, you need to be there working.
Yeah.
And lifting kegs and food, and my knees started to give out, my elbows, all that kind of stuff.
I don't think people realize how physical of a
gosh.
job it can be.
It was crazy. Long hours. So then I kind of decided that I wanted to retire, and we had a family friend that was going to buy me out, and then COVID came, that blessing that screwed everything up. But I quickly pivoted and made that like a, no hands-on kind of pick up to go thing, got it all settled, and was still able to kind of move on. So it was good. I missed it terribly during COVID because we're at home and all my friends.
You're like used to being around so many people
Yeah.
all the time, and
Yep.
then you just
Yep,
it's
exactly.
nothing.
Yep. And then from there, my son had graduated high school, one of my twins, and said, "Mom, I'm going to get my real estate license." And I said, "Okay." He goes, "You should too. We could have another family business." So I did. And promptly after I got my license, he said, "Oh, Mom, it's just not my vibe." I'm like, "What do you mean it's not your vibe?" He goes, "Yeah, it's just not my vibe."
It's harder than people realize, I
Yes.
think, to be a realtor. Not that I know from personal experience.
It is. It is. So he left, and here I am, and I actually love it. I'm super involved in our business community. I have been since Wells Fargo. I've started in the chamber and was an ambassador since Wells Fargo, and that's really kind of helped me know what to do throughout these different hats that I'm wearing.
So let's Wells Fargo. How long did you work for Wells Fargo?
2 decades.
Okay, so let's talk about Wells Fargo for a second, because that's longer still than restaurant and
Yep.
realtor combined.
Yeah.
So you started out doing this kind of flex job. Was that a commissioned role at all?
No,
that
it was just
purely
an
a
hourly, and then
part-time teller kind of thing.
And then I worked my way up to teller, and then they had like a CSR, customer service representative, and then to a banker, and then from a banker to a premier banker, which that's where I stayed, and I really liked it. It was all about relationships, building relationships, and utilizing your partners to make sure that the clients were, taken care of with every aspect of their banking, from housing to their investments to their checking account.
People have a lot of mixed feelings about Wells Fargo.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, it's been a minute since you've worked there.
Mm-hmm.
You stayed there a long time. How was it
did.
working for them?
I went through all of that. It was tough sales. It really was tough sales. But I have to say, that job helped me raise my kids. You know, I had great bosses. So if I needed to cut down for 2 or 3 months during the summer to spend more time with my kids, they'd let me. And I learned how to look people in the eye, how to shake their hand. Their training was second to none. And so it worked for me. I learned how to service my clients based on what they need, not on what they were telling me I needed them to have. So I had a backbone and was able to just say, you know, I'm doing what I think is best for my clients.
Right, because when you got to those higher levels, then that was more commission-based stuff. Did you have like a base salary, or
base salary and
and then some commissions?
Bonuses, we'll call it bonuses.
Yeah. So you were incentivized to sell certain products, but that may not always
not
have
only
been
incentivized, you were expected. You know,
were there like KPIs for you got
all
so
that
much
before
of this?
KPIs even came to be? Yes, I mean it really was. This is what you were supposed to sell to one customer, this, that, and the other. And I will say it wasn't just Wells Fargo. It was every bank out there.
I'm sure.
B of A, Bank of Marin, Exchange, all of those. Right. It just it was the culture back then. And then you know Wells Fargo was getting. I don't remember what tipped the iceberg, but thankfully I was gone and thinking, oh boy, I dodged a bullet.
Yeah, there was the news. I don't remember the exact details, but basically, I guess the incentives became so misaligned with being in the best interest of customers. The culture changed that people were just like opening up like not fake, but opening up checking accounts and other kinds of accounts and stuff without getting approval and things.
Those were the people wanting to. I don't think that was ever expected by the upper managers, but those people that were in those roles felt that that was the only way that they could
to hit the numbers
instead of pushing back and saying, listen, you know, or finding a niche that, you know, they enjoyed. I had kids at the time, so I would go out and educate at Meadow School and bring fake money and show them what a budget was. And you know, all those families came and opened savings accounts, and I would go and do financial literacy when they were in high school. And so I kind of just forged my own trails.
Yeah, I don't think I can ever recall being in high school and having like a banker come in and talk to us. I think a lot of kids, that's actually, I think, a really smart marketing effort.
They didn't want to listen to me. So that's the only way I could get them to listen to me, right, is to put myself in a position where they have to listen to me.
Yeah.
So I was not only teaching them those lessons, I was teaching their friends those lessons as well.
It's interesting how many of your, I mean, and I guess this is just what a good mom does, but it's how many of your choices related to your career were influenced by you, like, and you or your husband like spending more time with your children
100%,
or trying to teach them something.
And I was having a conversation earlier that 100% of my actions are still surrounding my kids. You know, that's just my life, right? I have 3 adult kids. My husband has 3 adult kids. We have 4 grandsons through my husband's side, and hopefully soon, or you know, in the not so far future, we'll have more from my side.
Yeah.
And that is what
our kids are watching. Hint.
Yeah. Let's get them married first.
Okay, fair enough.
Which is the first one gets married May of next year. But I think that living and growing up in the 80s, where you didn't have that family dinner, at least I didn't, it really predispositioned me to want to give that to my kids. They were working in the city. They didn't come to my cheerleading games. They didn't come to my swim meets or my softball games or, you know, any of the classroom plays that you did. I went to every single one. Yeah. You know,
it's interesting that my dad's situation is very similar. It's interesting how we either we decide we're going to be completely the opposite of our parents, or we end up repeating the same patterns.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of like in between, you know. My dad was a similar situation. I mean, my grandparents were like working on the farm all the time, and that's what he did. He didn't get to do a lot of extracurriculars because it was like, oh, you take the bus. I'm not driving you to some place. And then my dad worked a lot, but was really good about at least showing up to things. Like, he wasn't going to like pick me up from school or anything, but he was going to come to my basketball game. And, you know, if I was had a concert or something, he was going to be there. And I know that wasn't a direct response to how little support he got from his parents growing up.
It's true. That's kind of my thought process on everything is we are the sum of our experiences and the roads that we have taken. And some of those roads we couldn't pick, right?
Yeah.
Like your dad was born into that family. You were born into that family. You followed that family at first in your work history, working for your family business.
Yeah.
That was not a choice necessarily. That was your road that you were born on. But since then, you've decided, I'm going to take this road and this road.
To forge my own path,
Yeah.
I will say, while there was a lot of feeling like it was not, I did have a choice in working, at least once I graduated college.
Right.
I want to be clear. Not that my family's watching this, but I did have a choice in going back to work on the farm. But there was also like, it is kind of this like big looming thing in the background. And so I think it would have been hard to have never tried doing it.
Right.
And so in some way, like it was something I had to do. And I think in the sense that I would have regretted it, never having tried it probably.
Yeah.
And I learned a tremendous amount from it. And so like you said, like, even though I ended up I'm going in a different direction, I still needed those experiences 100% to end up where I am today.
And that is all life. And when I, tell my kids things, it's not because I know more. It's just because I've been along more roads than they have. And I, try to give them the benefit of that. They'll never take it. But, literally that's what it is. And I didn't choose necessarily. I didn't ever want to be a banker.
Right.
Or a restaurant owner, like growing up, or a realtor. That was not what I wanted to do. I wanted to either be an attorney or I wanted to go and be a child psychologist, and that's what I was going to go to school for. And, I have to give my kids a little bit of a break because I'm always pushing for them to get a corporate job that has paychecks and benefits, because I know how it was now working for myself for 10 years and my father being, an entrepreneur. And I remember him with bills all over the table and stress. And I don't want that for my kids. But at the same time, I don't think they should really know what they're going to do with their life because look, I still don't know what tomorrow brings. I really don't. And I hope I have that feeling forever. I hope I always go after something no matter what the age is,
I mean, I think that's the essence of living in some regards. Like I hope I don't end up in a place where it is like, it's just every day is the same and I have nothing new, pursuing nothing. And that could be as simple as just like, at some point in my life where I don't have to work anymore, but I have a hobby, but at least it's inventing new things. I think when you just stop and you're just watching TV all day, that's when things get rough.
Yeah. Objects in motion tend to stay in motion.
Exactly.
You give up. And
and
if it's that time of your life where, I didn't particularly enjoy my whole career at Wells Fargo. There was a lot of stress, but I knew that it's what I had to do at that point. And I think that everybody will have to do something that they don't want to do.
Yeah.
Right? It's just you make your choices based on where you are at the moment. And,
we can't control most of the time we can't control what happens to us, right?
Yeah.
What circumstances we end. I mean, obviously our choices have some effect, but what we can, like you couldn't do anything about your dad having a heart attack, right? But you can, the choice you do have is how you're going to respond in those circumstances. And I think that's what people lose sight of. I mean, I am saying this coming from a place of relative privilege growing up. We didn't have crazy amount of money, but over time, my parents became more successful. And I had a stable home and I never moved. I grew up in the same house. My parents still live in the same house. So I had a lot of privileges, but I think some people get some level of privilege, right? Some people are going to have it harder. And at some point, like life doesn't care. You have to choose how you're going to react to that because like there's only going to be so many handouts. There's only going to be so many things that people are willing to do for you, at some point you have to do it for yourself. And I think that's a perfect example of what you, based on what you're, the story is, you've made choices to do what you had to do to take care of yourself and to take care of your family, regardless of if it was exactly what you wanted at that time.
Yep.
And that's sometimes
and nobody
what life is
slows
about.
down. Boy, like when you're an adult, nobody stops and goes, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" It's like, "Oh shit, oops, sorry, I said a bad word."
It's fine.
I'm an adult. Okay, nobody's asking me.
Right.
It's like in the old days, you'd get out the paper and you would look for jobs.
Right.
You would
Pull open the classifieds.
go to an area of businesses and look for the help wanted sign. Like, no joke. There was no Craigslist. There was no
Indeed,
internet.
LinkedIn.
None of that. So, and that also closed in your world a lot. And that's where privilege does kind of poke its head in those areas. Because
Absolutely.
it's not really what you know, it's who you know. And a lot of people get their starts by that. And, I think of a lot of times where people go, "Oh gosh, poor me," and somebody else is saying, "Oh, you're privileged," and they don't see it. That is privilege, right? And we have to, like you said, I kind of grew up in a way, I call it a semi-charmed life. I had pretty much everything I wanted, but I didn't have what I really thought I needed, which was that family, close-knit family, and those Sunday dinners. And when I found myself in Petaluma, like I said, my dad, we moved every 2 years. I think it was like in third grade, we moved to Petaluma, and on a street where there were neighbors and I met friends and we would play on the streets.
Yeah.
And I remember like literally sitting on the stoop of my house, when everybody else was being called into dinner. And everybody thought my pink Schwinn bicycle was so great, and my rabbit fur coat. I mean, I had all of that, and they were like, "Oh my God, but you this and you that." And all I really wanted to do was have a family to come home to.
Yeah. It's amazing how simple kids are.
Yeah.
It's just like, yeah, stuff is great, but it never is the same as just feeling unconditional love from your parents on like a consistent basis and that quality time.
Yep.
I feel my kids are young, so I don't know, there's a lot I haven't experienced, but I do feel like they don't know the difference. They don't care about how, regardless of how me and my wife feel about something, like they don't know how small our house is. Yeah. They don't know they don't care about what the budget is. They don't care about, they can have 2 toys and they go outside and they play with, half the time got a bunch of crap outside and they just want to play with like a bucket of sand and some water and like sticks and rocks. Like they don't care about any of that stuff.
Not
they just
yet.
want to feel loved.
Just wait.
Well, I understand. As they get
then
older,
the brands come and they see their friends with this and that. But I also think that giving structure and teaching them, like I remember my dad, which I could have gotten anything, right? But there were these times where I wanted these Guess overalls. And I remember they were $85. And I said,
that's
Dad,
a lot in the 80s. Yeah.
I said, Dad, I want these overalls. And he's like, "Well, how much are they?" I go, $85. And he looks at me, he goes, "I'll give you 35. If you really want it, you go earn the other 50.
There you go. And
I kind of learned like, okay, well, I could settle for this Mervyn's pair for $35, or I can go and babysit. And I did. I made flyers up. I passed them out to the neighbors. I did what I had to do to get what I wanted.
That's a super valuable lesson though, because if you had ended up in a situation where you hadn't learned those lessons, I'm sure it would have been a lot more difficult for you to kind of pick yourself up by the bootstraps when he did pass away.
Probably. And the fact that my mom lived very simple life in small towns and, double wide trailer. She also moved a lot, but, never had in excess of money, right? We were always kind of, so when I went there in the summertime and during Christmas, what I got there was very different. Like she had gone shopping for me and washed the clothes and folded them and put them on my bed. And it felt like, wow, it's a home. And my mom's house was always the cleanest house ever. So I learned I lived 2 lives basically, that semi-charmed life and then this other life where I saw hardworking people surviving and happy.
Yeah.
So it kind of that did center me a lot. It wasn't just all this wealth in Marin that I saw and my friends getting brand new cars. And, you know, I didn't get brand new cars, but in fact, my first car was a 77 Thunderbird, and it was green with white walls.
That sounds pretty cool, actually.
It was not
No,
cool.
not at the time.
Not at the time.
Those
My
Thunderbirds
friends were
no longer
little
cool at that.
cabriolets, like the little convertible
VWs.
Volkswagen. And I had this, we called it the green machine. I couldn't even back out of my driveway, literally. But my dad thought, you know what, for your first car, this is what I'm comfortable giving you. And, you know, I look back and think, that car, my God, I mean, just, yeah, in high school in Marin County, and you get a car like that, you have to be able to hold your own. You know, here I am, a cheerleader, getting out of this. I mean, it was like, it was so polar opposite of what my friends had.
Yeah.
But I love that car. I mean, it until the brakes failed and I didn't stop, and then there was a problem.
I think that's interesting. I feel like, you know, like cars were such a sign of independence, you know, but now lots of, like, I feel like cars mattered when I was in high school, but it was more like, did you just have a car or not?
Yeah.
Right? There were obviously, you were jealous of, there were the kids with like brand new cars.
Yeah.
You know, I was always jealous of a kid that was like driving a new pickup and had like an exhaust on it and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And for me, my first car was a like 1970s like diesel yellow Mercedes.
Wow.
This thing, well, it's not as fancy as you think. That actually, my grandparents had imported. They're 100% German, so they had actually at that time it was pretty. They'd regularly go back to Germany and then bring a car back with them.
Wow.
That was like a common thing to do, and so they had it for a long, long time. But this thing went 0 to 60 in like 15 minutes.
I bet it did.
It was it was so slow. It was literally a boat. But
those 70s cars.
the culture has changed around it, where like lots of kids aren't even getting driver's licenses, like even until maybe they're 18 or not at all. And it's not like they just Uber places. It's not even like we live in a town that's that that easy to take public transportation
That's
in either.
true. Yeah. I don't get me started on what these kids are doing today.
These darn kids.
I don't get it, but I don't live in their house, so I don't know
all different circumstances,
their anxiety level, or
did
somebody have an accident when they were young and they're scared, or
that's fair.
I mean, I'm telling you, the feeds that even I get in my Facebook have such a dire experience for my mood. I don't know what they're getting, and I kind of, as crazy as it was when I grew up, we didn't have that, right? News didn't come to you. You had to read the paper, right? Or happen to be in front of the TV at 6 o'clock.
Right. It wasn't getting
evening
pushed to you
No.
constantly right into your pocket.
Was it
into your
happening? Probably, but we weren't hearing about it. And thank God we weren't, because I don't know that I would have made it as far as I am now.
Yeah,
it's scary.
People want to talk about the world being terrible now, and there's always, unfortunately, humans will always be humans, and there's always going to be terrible things happening. A lot of scary stuff happening in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. I mean, there's plenty of. There's always been, people have always thought it's the end of times.
Yeah.
For thousands of years, that's been just the cycle.
I can remember being pregnant during the Richard Allen Davis case. I was in Petaluma. Richard Allen Davis is the one that kidnapped Polly Klaas.
Oh, okay.
And when I was pregnant, pretty much giving birth, they were talking about his trial. That happened in my town.
Yeah.
So I was petrified of kidnapping. It was a real fear.
Yeah.
You know,
I believe it.
So it's really your surroundings, and I think positivity is greatly undervalued. Although I still feel the doom and gloom, and I'm prepared for it, But
Are you a prepper? You got an underground
I'm not
basement
a prepper.
ready to go?
No, but we were talking about that earlier. I'm definitely like a Well, I don't think I'm a pessimist. I think I'm a realist. Everybody else thinks I'm a pessimist because
That's what every pessimist thinks, is that they're.
No, but I
they're just
think
practical.
it's the realist. I think it's like there's a real chance this could happen.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So you better just touch on it and prepare yourself mentally for it, but then move on with your day.
What's the
right?
craziest thing you're prepared for?
Oh God, I have bad thought. I'm a knock on wood, like OCD person. So and now at my age, I can't sleep at night. So something will pop into my head and I'll be worried, about my kid who has to travel the next day. And then I literally now I've had to start knocking on wood to try to get that thought out of my head so I can move on with the good stuff. But I'm constantly worried.
That's I think that's a little bit of a mom thing too, because
Maybe.
I'm a little worried for my wife then, because she's constantly just like imagining these worst case scenarios with our children. It's like we're around bats and we were around
carry disease.
Yeah, and then she's worried about our one getting into the house and biting our kid in the sleep and them getting rabies and dying. And it's
I get it. Keep your doors closed. That's a real thing, right? There's bubonic plague back out. You got to watch the damn squirrels. Literally, there's crap everywhere.
Yeah.
So you do have to, and it feels better to me as a mom to just tell him. One of my sons works for Marin Municipal Water District, and he's out in the brush, and I go, babe, you need to spray your boots and your stuff. And he's looking at me like,
once a mom, always a mom.
Mom. I'm like, no, really, like Lyme disease is like a real thing.
Yeah.
He's like, I know, Mom. They give us a kit. We got it. I got it. But unless I say that, when
You got to get it off your mind.
Yeah, when the kids are traveling, when I'm traveling in the plane, I've got this whole thing that I do. Right when I'm, before you have to turn off your phone, I'm texting each one of them separately because if something happens to me, I don't want them comparing their texts from me and seeing the same thing.
I will say something strange that's happened to me is like I never used to think much about flying, but since having kids, it definitely I do what's the word is eluding me, but just I do kind of spiral a little bit. Like I'm saying when I'm saying goodbye to my kids and thinking what if this is the last time I ever say goodbye to them or kiss them or whatever. I do find myself doing that on planes now, and I have to just grin and bear it because I'm like, okay, this isn't rational,
But it kind of is, right? We're hearing about all these plane crashes every day, so it's as rational as could. Don't do the statistics.
Well, statistically, it's pretty. It isn't very rational, right?
I had my high school boyfriend die in a plane crash, and
what size plane?
Well, no, he had his pilot's license.
Okay, see that's
18,
different. I think
it was a bomber. They were in an air show, so he was in.
That's crazy. Plane. That's crazy traumatic.
Yeah. So,
but that is very different than commercial airlines.
Yeah.
I think way more accidents happen in private planes than they do in commercial planes.
I agree with you there. I do, because we hear it.
Yeah.
Happening all the time.
That's most of what you hear.
If I was rich, I wouldn't be piddling around in a little plane or a helicopter. I'll see you there. I'll take my car. I'll see you tomorrow.
Well, we are getting close to the end of our time already.
Nice.
It's been a wonderful conversation. What I'd like to, one thing we haven't talked about that I wanted to touch on really quick is you talked about your kids, you wanting them to get a corporate job. Yeah. And it's interesting, as someone that had a corporate job for 10 years and then has been, 20-ish years, and then has been effectively self-employed since then, because I do consider being a real estate agent to be relatively self-employed because it's your business.
Right.
Even if you're associated with a brokerage or something like that, it's really you that people are buying. And so why that advice, and and kind of just what has been good and what has been bad, being self-employed versus working for someone?
Well, and when I say corporate for them, I mean it could be corporate, it could be union, it could be a government job, a city government job.
A consistent check coming in every 2 weeks.
Yes, where there's room for growth. I think the reason I say that, and this may come off very sexist, but I have boys, and they could get married, and their wife or partner could have a child. And that is what I lacked from my partner. He was self-employed and worked for his parents' restaurant. So I had to continue working when I wished I could have been a little bit more
It's
flexible.
the sense of security for their future partner
And family.
and family.
Yeah.
Interesting. Once again, coming back to that theme, just so much
I am
motivated by
telling
just
you,
like
yes. Yeah.
worrying about your family.
Yeah. And wanting them to just have that understanding that they get 2 weeks vacation. Next year, they'll get 3 weeks. I come from where people retired from companies. My current husband retired from HP after, 32 years or some crazy number.
Right.
Like I worked for
He's
Wells
kind of
Fargo
the last
20 years.
generation to kind of be
Yes.
like that.
So I'm behind the times, and I have 2 of my kids who listen to me. One is in the union, and one is has a government job. And then I have one stubborn entrepreneur that, wants to do what he wants to do and doesn't really want to start at A and climb to D. He, wants to do what he wants to do. And I've struggled and struggled, but I've had to really realize, and actually my best friend's the one that told me, she's like, you want your kids to, have these work for the city or the county, but yet you're an entrepreneur. Your dad was an entrepreneur. Like,
Right.
What do you...
It's in the blood.
Yeah. And I stopped and looked at that and said, yeah, so I've really laid off. And, he needs to find his way. And that way is not necessarily the way I would have chose for him, but that doesn't mean it's not the right road.
Yeah, so much of parenting has to be like you raise them up to a certain point, and then you got to let them fly and figure out their own path.
One of the books I'm reading right now is called Raising Your Adult Children. Keep your mouth shut and the doormat out, the welcome mat out. So it is a lot of, really in everything.
Yeah.
We can't control, going back to what you said earlier, we can't control what life throws at us, but we can control how we react to that. Mm-hmm. So I am learning with age. Yes, I am learning.
That's awesome. So that actually brings us to one of the questions I like to ask everyone is what are the 1 or 2 books that you either gift or recommend the most to people?
That one's a great one because I think it does really help us understand the independence that our kids need. The other one is I just read that Let Them by Mel Robbins, that Let Them theory, which also is, I think now that I'm in my 50s, I'm kind of understanding that I really don't give a crap what people think of me. Mm-hmm. If they're watching me on my Tuesday little video that I do and they're like making fun of me, I don't care anymore. It makes me happy.
Yeah.
That's what I want to do. And, but I don't think I was that way in my youth.
Yeah.
Right. It's all, that's perplexing having people worrying. Oh my God, am I going to look stupid? I don't care anymore.
Yeah, I relate to that a lot. I think when I was, and it's hard because actually my wife and I were just talking about this last night. We see it in our son, like huge people pleaser growing up, really care about what people think, especially getting praise from like authority figures and stuff. Mm-hmm. Like that was a big deal my whole entire life. And I see that in my kids. So then it's like, okay, how do I, like from a parenting perspective, it's actually not always terrible because then it means your kid like wants to do well in school, doesn't want to get in a bunch of trouble, but also cultivating like you also don't want them making decisions in their life because of what other people think, as opposed to being independent. And it took me a long time to get to that place where I was like, okay, I don't care what my family thinks. I don't care what anyone else thinks. Like I'm going to go do what I feel like I'm supposed to be doing. And it took a lot to get there. And I don't think I would have gotten there if it wasn't for my wife, which is always an interesting thing.
Well, and you know that, and you're seeing that in your son. So celebrate the mistakes in his life, and show him what he learned, and go, look, it's okay. It's okay that you just broke this because now you know what, not to do it.
Exactly.
So give him the praise for not just the good stuff, but the bad stuff and the choice that he made when he did that. He came to you and told you, Dad, I goofed and I broke the window. Yeah.
I think that's also what my wife and I talked about, like is related to that, was that because I know what it's like to be that way, hopefully I'll be able to help like struggle with it less than I did.
Yeah.
You know, because my wife's like, she doesn't care. She was born not caring what people thought. And so she's just like, I don't relate to it at all. I just do not relate to being motivated by that. So,
wow. Well, everybody's different,
yeah,
right? That's a testament.
Also the power of, you know, co-parenting, right?
Yeah.
Having a partner is that
right.
you bring different things to the table for
Yep.
your kids. So the last question, because we are at our time, is if you could put one thing on a billboard over the highway that everyone could see, like what piece of wisdom would you want to impart to people?
Something that my dad raised me with, and that's basically nothing easy is worth having. And I used to tell my boys when they were teenagers, I'm like, dude, nothing easy, nothing. And I mean, nothing easy is worth having, because it really, like if something is worth it, you're going to work for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's
there's no such thing as hard luck as there's no such thing as luck, just hard work. Right.
That's right.
Absolutely.
That's it.
Well, Kathleen, it has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for coming on. I do want to ask, how can people find you online? Feel free to give a plug to anything that you may want to encourage people to check out.
Yeah. I mean, they can find me on Facebook, Kathleen Rose Stafford. I do my little Tuesday reels about positivity in our community. And my website is Stafford Family Team, hence, because I was supposed to have a family business. But that's okay. We still keep it. StaffordFamilyTeam.com is my real estate website.
Awesome. And you can find me at flywheelconsulting.co. Thank you again for being on.
Thanks for having me.
Look forward to chatting again soon.
All right.